Hello guys, in this tutorial we are going to be building Todo app. So this is how the end result is going to look like. So we can add pressing enter or just clicking the button here. And also if the input is empty, we're going to have an error. The to-do can't be empty, please add a to-do. Then we can add something again. And we can also remove a to-do we want. We're going to build this with React hooks as well. So here are the styles I did beforehand. So you guys can copy those if you want to have the same to-do. So you can pause the video here and grab all the styles you want, because we won't spend any time on styling anything. So we're gonna need two components. One of them is gonna be form. So let's make that. And inside the form, we're gonna have one input and one button. Then let's import that form in our app. So here we're gonna have one container and we're gonna put our form inside of that. So we already have the styles because we added them beforehand, that's why our form is styled. And the other component we're gonna need is gonna be the to-do item that we're gonna see here. So once we add, this is gonna be our second component, the to-do item. So let's go ahead and make that. So we're gonna have a paragraph, which is gonna be the thing we're adding through the input, and we're gonna have an X icon. In my case, I only have a span, but you guys should probably add an icon for the X. And we're just gonna add something for now. And we also need to import that to-do item inside of app. And let's just render it under the form. So we got all the HTML and CSS down. So now we can start making functionality to this app. One thing you're gonna need is UUID. So you're gonna go to this page, you're gonna install UUID, and then this is the line how you can import it. In my case, in someone sandbox here, I can just add it as dependency. But if you guys are not using sandbox, just go here, install it with this line, and then import it like that. And then I'll import that as well. Like that. And then the first thing we're gonna need to import is useState here. So let's see. We're gonna have few states. One is gonna be for our input value. So we need to get this input value because once we hit enter or click the button, we wanna be able to add it here. But since button and input are inside a form, we're also gonna need a function which are gonna call on submit. So every time we submit the form, we're gonna grab that input value and we're gonna output a to-do here. So let's make the state for our input first. And we're gonna set this to an empty string at the beginning. And then we also need to pass that to our form because our input is inside our form. And we don't have access to this yet, so we need to pass both of these as props. So input value is equal to input value, and then set input value and then inside our form we can destructure it here, get the values. Then for the input, our value is going to be that input value state we made. And we're going to have an onChange event. Let me make this bigger. We're going to pass e, and we're going to use the function to set our state, which is set input value, to that e.target.value. So this is going to allow us to grab the input value at the beginning, and whenever we change the input, if we type like hello, now this input value becomes hello. That's going to help us in outputting these. So if we go back to our app, the second thing we're going to need is a state for storing all of our to-dos. To-dos and set to-dos, and we're going to set this to an empty array at the beginning. And the last thing we're going to need is the function we can call when we submit the form here. Because once we submit the form, either hitting enter here or by clicking the button, we want to submit the form and output a single to-do here. So we're going to make that function here. We're just going to call it handle submit. And the first thing we need to do is to prevent the default behavior of the form. So if we add something here, it just reloads the page, and we don't want that from happening. So we can pass e here. And we can prevent the default. And also, before we forget, we need to add this function on submit on our form. So because it doesn't have access to the function yet, we need to pass it here to our form. And then the same thing we did for state, we're going to grab our function here, and we're going to add on submit event to our form. And we can just call that function. So now if we submit the form, it's not going to reload the page. The second thing we need to do is here we're going to output our to-dos to the page, because right now we had coded one to-do just so you guys can see it. But here we want to use our function and set our to-dos to the one we just added through our input, or with the name from our input. So how we can do that? So we can use this function that updates our to-dos, which is called setToDos, which is an array, and we're gonna get all the previous to-dos with spread operator, just like that. And we can add a comma here, and we can pass an object. And this object is gonna contain two things. One of them is gonna be whatever we type here, we wanna store that inside our object. So we can call that like, let's say, to-do text. And that's gonna be equal to our input value. So input value is our state here, which contains whatever we type here, because we added onChange event here. So it's setting input value to whatever we type, and then that input value becomes like 555. So now our to-do text is same as our input value, and we're gonna use that later on. And the other thing we're gonna need to add is to-do ID. And that's gonna be equal to the thing we imported and installed before, which is UUID before, and you can call that as a function here. Just like that. And that's gonna give us a different ID for each to-do we add, and this is just gonna give us whatever value we type in here. And the last thing for adding to-dos is that we need, because this is an array and we're gonna have multiple to-dos. So whenever we have an array, we need to map through this to output them. So because our to-do item doesn't have access to them yet, we need to pass the to-do state we made to our to-do item here. And inside our to-do item, we need to map. But first, we can destructure it here and get our to-dos. And then here, we're just gonna add a React fragment, which is just opening and closing tag here, and then here as well. A second, like that. Because we wanna have a map before our div. You can wrap this in a div as well, it's completely fine. And then here, we wanna map over our state, which is array of all to-dos. So that would be to-dos.map. And then let's say for each to-do item, we wanna cut this div and paste it inside our map. So our to-do item is gonna have a span that's always gonna be the same, it's just an X icon to remove it, and our hello here, so we're not gonna hardcode that value. So if we go back, our to-do text, we have an object, so we are mapping through all to-dos, and then we have an object here, and we have two values, to-do ID and to-do text. So to-do text is gonna be whatever it says here, whatever we get from the input. So we can easily access that since we're inside the map, and that's gonna be to-do item here. And then we need to access that object, which is to-do text. And also, since we are inside the map, we wanna add a different to-dos for each of them. And it's gonna be easier to remove them afterwards, so we wanna add a key here. And the key is gonna be this to-do ID, the second value we have inside our object. So we can check for to-do item. Not to-do ID. Yeah. And now, if we add something, you can see it here. Keeps getting added. If we click add, it does the same. So there are a few things we need to fix. The first thing being, we probably want to clear input once we actually add the values here. So an easy way to do that, here we can just use the function which updates our state, which is called set input value. And every time we submit the form, we want to set this to an empty string, and that's going to clear our input. So now, if I add anything, input is clear. Okay? And then one more issue that we have right now is we can still add an empty input, as you can see. If you check for like, if input value is not equal to an empty string, that's gonna work when input is empty like this, but still if you if you add space and click enter, that's gonna break and add it. So a good way of fixing that is we can just add an if statement here. Input value trim is equal to an empty string, we just wanna return and exit out of the function. So now that's not going to allow us to add anything, but if we type E here, it's just going to add E without any spaces. And we also, like in the last example I showed you, we want to show an error message, and we also made a class in CSS for that. So under our form, we're going to add a paragraph. And we're going to make another state that's going to display our error message here. And we can set that to an empty string at the beginning, and we want to display that message right here inside our paragraph we made. So right now it's just an empty string, but as it should be, we only want to output the error message when we hit enter here or you try adding spaces. So every time our input is empty. So inside of this if statement, instead of typing return here, just add curly braces. So inside of this, we want to set our error message. And we can say something like, let's see, to do. So something like that. So now every time our input is empty and we try submitting, we're gonna get that message. But now it added the input, it added our to-do as well. So after doing this, we only wanna return and exit out of the function. So right now, if we try adding space, hitting enter, we're just gonna do that. And we also wanna remove this when we add an actual to-do. So whenever we have a value and this is not empty, we want to remove this error message. So the easiest way to do that is we can set that error message to an empty string right here before we get the if statement. That's going to make sure the error message is gone each time input is not empty. So if we refresh that and we add a to-do, so it's empty. If we actually add a to-do now, it's gone. Now it shows the error message, then once we add something, it just removes it. And then the last thing we're gonna need is we're gonna need to add a function to remove our to-dos. So once we click this X icon we made. So we can call that like, let's call it remove to-do. And that's gonna take an ID. And for now, before we forget, we wanna pass that remove to-do to our to-do item, because this span should have that function on it. So once we click the span, we wanna run that function. So we need to pass it here to our to-do item. Then inside of here, we want to destructure it here. And then once we click our span, we want to remove our to-do. So we're going to call that function whenever we click a span. But instead of just passing it here, we want to pass an arrow function. We want to call a remove to do. And in our case, we somehow need to grab our ID here. So we need to grab ID of our to-dos here inside this function so we can remove it easily later. So how do we do that? We can just pass, since we're inside the map, we can pass this to-do item dot to-do ID here. And now we're going to have access to ID of our to-dos inside this function that we're making here. So that's why we passed ID here. Now we have access to that. And then the only thing we need to do here, we need to update this again. So our state that holds our to-dos, which is called set to-dos, we can call that. So we need to grab all the to-dos we currently have, which is called to-dos here, line 9. We want to filter through all of them and just get the values back. So once we filter through all of our to-dos, we want to get all the to-dos back except the one we clicked on. So if we click, I'll show you an example in a second. So we're going to have a filter here. And then we're going to have a to-do item. Let's call it to-do item. And we want to return to-do item with to-do ID. That's how we called it here. That's not equal to the ID we passed inside the function. So what this is gonna do, let's say we add 1, 2, actually that's my bad. So let's say we add 1, 2, and 3. So this filter is gonna return all the values or all the to-dos except the one we clicked on. So if we click on number 3, it's gonna return number 1 and 2, and it's gonna remove the number 3. So let's try click on number 3, it removes the number 3 and it gets this back. But for example, if this was equal to ID we passed on, this would only, let me see, let me make this a bit different again, like 1, 2, and 3. So in our case, if we click number 2 now, this would actually return the number 2 on the page and it would remove number 1 and 3. Because this is the one we clicked on. We're checking for that here. So we want to return the one we clicked on here. So if we click number 2, it only returns that, but it removes the other to-dos. And we want to do the opposite. We want to remove that and return all the other to-dos we have. So that's why we have not equals to the ID we click on. So again, if we click on number 3, it's going to remove that and return everything that we didn't click on, which in our case is 1 and 2. Or if we click number 2, it's going to remove that and return 1 and 3. And that would be it for this tutorial. I hope you guys learned something new. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.